The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
It's the Best Birth podcast, where we interview experts that elevate you as you prepare your heart and mind to have the best birth.
Each episode will interview professionals so you are prepared for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Our experts will build your confidence and empower you to trust your intuition throughout your pregnancy.
This audio is taken from videos on YouTube. Watch the entire episodes on YouTube at Birth Made Mindful. You're listening to the Best Birth podcast. We're here today with our guest, Amanda Horvath.
Amanda Horvath is a content creator who is all about growing your business through the power of video. She has years of experience doing videos for other businesses and top content creators, and now uses her expertise to help others overcome hurdles and get faster results. Amanda's purpose in life is to tell stories. She and her team record history by telling your business story. She is the mother of one little boy and is currently shifting into a new phase in her business as a result of motherhood. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Well, Amanda, we are excited to pick your brain today all about how motherhood has helped you transform and become the individual that you are today. Would you mind just kind of walking us through that?
Absolutely. So as everyone listening to this, or if you have yet to have a child, you will soon find out just the transition that occurs moving into motherhood. So for me, I was unexpectedly thrown into motherhood. I was thinking maybe I would get pregnant the following year. I was pre-engagement, actually. So I was thinking I would get engaged that year and then have a baby the next year, or get married the next year and have a baby the next year. And of course, as all things happen, man plans and God laughs, right? So I found myself thrown into it very quickly, both into marriage as well as having a baby. And it has been nothing short of life transformational in terms of the adjustment to, I don't know which direction you want to take it, but like in terms of being someone that used to work out 5 days per week and then finding myself not working out for almost an entire year just because your milk supply would crash and all the things associated with it, time, and how everything begins to shift. And also realizing that what you used to do, what I used to do in my business, I could do because I had downtime outside of my business. But then when you become a mom, you don't have downtime outside of your business. And so your capacity to produce goes down. And also because I was thrown into this shift unexpectedly at the time of getting pregnant, was kind of at a point where if I wasn't going to become a mom, I was probably going to pivot my business at that point. And so I had to kind of put that on the back burner, continue on the trajectory that I was already on in order to have ease in my life through the postpartum period. And now after, my son is 2 years and like 4 months or something like that, I am actually going through that transition at this stage, which continues to be interesting. So it's my very...
The transitions of life they're like those hills and valleys that we get to walk through every day. One thing that is for certain is that when you become a mother, the transition is the biggest that you'll ever experience.
Yeah, including the brain chemistry changing. I think that's the part that you almost don't, like I try to tell friends now, because I was one of the first out of my friend groups to get into this. I know you think that you're going to be this, like everything that everyone else says won't apply to you, because that's how we always think about it. But when you actually experience the mental shift that occurs in terms of sharpness that kind of goes away during that first year of being a mom, it shifts everything.
I've been thinking a lot about identity recently and how it supersedes circumstances, but it doesn't mean that it's not influenced by it. How would you say that you are starting to return or adapt to your new identity as a mother?
I'd say I'm still very much doing it. I thought it would be easier by now, maybe, but it's still not. It continues to be a journey. So how am I shifting my identity? One area has been your house is going to be messy. Change that occurs. As someone that is extremely OCD, loves to have a clean environment, my mind reflects my environment. There has been, and luckily pre-birth, I was already doing work to like unravel some of these habits that I had around cleanliness. but like sitting in the discomfort, I think is like the number one thing that has shifted my identity. And it can show up in all different areas, but sitting in the discomfort, my house is messy and it's okay. Cool, right? My environment has changed. It does not reflect anything on me. Like, this is happening. And same with other things, right? My relationship to fitness has shifted, which means that my body has shifted. My relationship to fitness has changed, and it's okay, right? Like, so constantly just adding this concept of it's okay afterwards has really allowed me to surrender to motherhood a lot more.
For me was productivity and just having to readjust my expectations of what I could get done in a day or what I should expect myself to get done in a day. And even just putting brush my teeth on the list and checking it off, that was great. If that's all I got done in the day, or, you're keeping a human alive. And so all of those changes with the pivot in your business, what does that look like?
One of the things that's challenging about motherhood is like, you almost don't know, like, is it because of motherhood? Is it because of this other thing? Is it because of this? It's all weaved together. And so mine happened to coincide with this concept called Saturn return, which is a period of time that we all go through from 28 to 32, where essentially Saturn returns to the point that it was in the sky when you were born. That creates a lot of shifts in your life. It kind of makes you have a come to reality moment where anything that is misaligned begins to drop away. And so mine coincided with motherhood as well as discovering human design. And human design is a system that basically I was pitched to me as your map for moving through life without resistance. And when I found it, it was one of those like life-shifting moments of, wow, I've kind of been doing things a little bit misaligned. And then enter motherhood on top of that, enters in return. I have come out on the other side realizing that while my message online has been who I am in many ways, there's also evolution that needs to occur. And so I've been kind of doing a lot of soul exploration throughout this time and really like prioritizing that and giving myself space for lightening the load on income, or the pressure on making money, right? And even giving myself permission to pull out of savings too, to give myself more of that space and give my husband an opportunity to step up in that area as well, which I think is a conversation that many women need to have around this transition in life as well, because it's a two-person game, right? So everything's changing in terms of my business, in terms of my content strategy, in terms of my offerings, in terms of the hours that I work. All of it has shifted.
Well, I want to ask you more about human design because it feels like something that could be really relevant to moms and to understanding their kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it actually is for children. The founder himself said he was someone that would talk in kind of shocking language, which a lot of people don't like, and can turn off a lot of people. But his concept was like, adults are kind of lost in terms of they have so much conditioning. They are one way already. After however many years of being that way, it's really hard to change, and very few will go through the process of changing. However, when a child is born, they have yet to experience that conditioning. And so they really come out as who they are. So with being able to pull the chart of my child, it's not about forcing him to be someone that this thing says. It's more about like, let me look at this and let me observe him and the unfolding of his behaviors and how his energy works, and learn kind of like some tactics, helping him process what's going on in life. And then also how his energy has come into the dynamic of my family with my husband and I, and completely shifted that relationship too. So like understanding really the energetic frequencies that occur when a new child comes into the home, when a new body comes into the home. So I'm happy to.
Are there any takeaways that you have learned that have helped you navigate and kept your home and your family in that state of equilibrium?
Absolutely. Yes. So at a very high level, human design, there's like 5 types or 4 types. There's an argument online of how many there are. So the first is generators, and subtype of generators, manifesting generators. And these are people that are here to be the doers of the world. They can go, assuming that they're doing something that they love doing. If they do something that they don't like, then they burn out. They carry life force energy in them and this renewable fuel to consistently go. That is 70% of the population. Then there are other types, other 3 types, which for the record, if you are a generator, it doesn't mean that you're not special, that you're similar to 70% of the world. There's like nuances. This is the science of differentiation. But another type is projector, and I'm a projector. This is 20% of the population. We are here to guide the generators to use their energy in more satisfying ways. I can say the other types too and come back to the realizations. The next one is a manifester. And a manifester is not here to ask permission. They're here to do what they need to do, what they see should be done in the world, go out and initiate. And they're the only type that are here to go out and initiate. That's only 9% of the population. And then there's reflectors, and reflectors are extremely receptive to energy. They are here to really feel the collective, what's going on in the collective, and then their lives end up reflecting. So if they're in an environment that's really not healthy, they will be experiencing a lot of health problems and different things like that. So they're here to really analyze and reflect society. And so knowing your type and knowing your spouse's type and then knowing your child's type is extremely beneficial. So me as a projector mom, I'm not a doer. I don't have that consistent energy to wake up and go, 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 go. Learning that has been huge. So learning to manage energy management. Okay, do I know when enough is enough? I've done a hard day of work. I've done 6 hours of calls or whatever it is. Do I know when enough is enough? Should I cook dinner? Should we just order out? Little things like that. Or can I ask my generator husband to come in, use his energy to get things done, right? And call upon other people in a way that is satisfying for him, right? And navigating that energy within the household. And then also understanding, my child is a generator, manifesting generator, which he has a ton of energy. And so bedtime is the most challenging time. It wasn't before, but now that we're in the terrible twos, when we took off the crib gate, it's now a big boy bed. If he hasn't gotten his energy out, he's not going to sleep. So get that energy out throughout the day, right? So there's these little hacks along the way that you can kind of discover, even at a very high level, to navigate a resistance-free house without making it personal, right? Like my husband understanding that I don't have that consistent energy. Okay, can he step up to the plate in that area, right? And maybe be the generator that's going to run with my child and get his energy out. So there's a lot of nuances that can come from it.
I love this concept of energy and energy exchange too, because you mentioned when enough is enough or knowing your limits and things like that, because if you are putting forth a lot of energy to something that's not giving back or you don't feel fulfilled or up, it can kind of cause dread or discomfort or unfulfillment, and just recognizing where we are spending our energy and who we're spending it with.
Absolutely. Each type, theirs will show up in a certain way. So a generator, if they're doing something that they're not satisfied doing, then they experience a lot of frustration, and that frustration is enveloping to those around them. And so if you're a mom and you're doing parts of motherhood that are really not satisfying, because there's just a lot of it that is not satisfying, then that frustration can bubble over and begin impacting and same, there's a whole system for emotions, and 50% of the population has their own inner emotions and their own consistent experience of them, while 50% of the population are empathic to the emotions around them. So understanding where do you fall on that spectrum helps you understand, okay, my child will be impacted by my emotions, or actually my child's emotions will impact me, and how do I work with this?
It definitely makes me want to go and find my own type and understand my child's type so that I can manage our expectations in a different way and run a household that is free of resistance. That sounds glorious.
Highly recommend it.
Is there a specific place you direct people to learn more about human design, or could they learn that through your videos?
So the first thing is to look up your chart. My favorite app is the Neutrino Design app, and you can put as many charts in there as possible. So you can like look up your type, you can look up your husband and your kids and get the dynamics. And what I really recommend for people is to screenshot them and maybe put them in Canva and put them all beside each other. And before you even understand what you're looking at, recognize the differences, right? So there's all these different shapes, all these different colors, and you don't need to understand what they are, but it's kind of like an energetic or a visual representation of how your energy works. Anything that's white within the chart is where you're going to receive energy from those around you, where you're receptive to energy. Anything that's colored is where you're going to impact other people. And so you can see, wow, I'm either very receptive or I'm here to really make an impact on other people, and other people will feel me in the room, right? So just understanding those very small dynamics can then kick off further investigation in terms of just like intuitively researching what stands out to you. Like, I'm the only one that has this center white within my chart. What does that mean, right? Google search that. But to answer your question, yes, Amanda Horvath on YouTube will be filled with human design resources moving forward. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love this idea of just recognizing how your energy is going to make a difference for your children and that their energy makes a difference on you. You mentioned some of these elements of motherhood that are difficult if you have a certain type, and understanding yourself, I think, makes you the best mom that you can be, because you understand what your needs are. You can understand how to set up your day or your week or your month in a way that brings fulfillment to your life. And a happy mom leads to a happy family.
Amen.
Well, I want to ask you some questions about your journey into becoming a mother. Kind of how your preparation in your pregnancy and how your birth, started your experiences.
I heard about this concept of hypnobirthing, and at first I was like, what is that? Kind of like everyone is when you first hear about it, like, I'm going to hypnotize myself? I don't know about that. But as you look more and more into it, or as I looked more and more into it, I realized, it's just a matter of beginning to face any fears that you have associated with the work. Really reprogramming how you're thinking about it, thinking very naturally about it. This is something that our bodies are made to do. It's totally fine. I come from a background of having endometriosis, which came with a lot of pain throughout the years. And so there's been a lot of like fears associated with the womb, and just everything as any sort of like female reproduction systems. And so it was empowering to actually, like, instead of me being fearful of like having those same pains, it's like someone told me endometriosis is your body saying something's wrong. Birth is a natural process where it's maybe painful at times, right? But there's no need to be fearful of it. You're about to meet your baby, right? So like being in birth and being like, every sensation will get me one step closer to my baby was such an empowering thing. So I truly, I went all in with it. I did my best, right, to listen before I went to sleep every night to the hypnobirthing tracks, and I started preparing, I think at like 34 weeks or something, I started the tracks, and then I went to a full 42 weeks. I was going to do it at a birthing center. I drank the concoction that they gave me to attempt to induce labor. I think it was like peanut butter and champagne and castor oil and all the things. It was weird. And it did kick off contractions from the very beginning. I was having contractions only 5 minutes apart. And it was intense pretty quickly in that regard. And so I quickly put the tracks on and got my headphones in. And I had determined that this was going to be an inner world experience. Like I was going to be okay, kind of tuning out as needed, really tuning in with my body and kind of being internal. My mom is a doula, and she was my doula, which was amazing. I had many hesitations leading up to birth of whether or not I should have her there. So if you're debating that, totally normal. In the end, I was very happy that she was present. And she ended up coming over in the middle of the night. I went through many contractions as I tried to sleep because it kind of came on. I would think the contractions began at like 6 p.m. or something like that. So sleeping overnight. And I think around like 4 p.m. I was like, okay, they said that, when it's whatever however far apart, y'all know better than me at this point, because it's amazing how fast you forget this stuff. You should maybe consider going to the hospital. And so because they started 5 minutes apart, it was like, okay, am I progressing? Like, is this normal? And I also knew that if I didn't go into active labor by noon the next day, I would be admitted to the hospital because I risked out of the birthing center. So I was determined to have the natural birth and avoid induction. So went to the birthing center, and as many women experience, I was like 1 centimeter dilated or something, like so small. And so my body was trying really hard to, whether it was just the castor oil creating uncomfortable sensations or contractions, my body was not actually dilating. And so at some point they said, okay, it's time to transfer to the hospital. And so we headed to the hospital, and I was fortunate enough, one of the main midwives was actually on duty at the hospital that I got transferred to. So I started with the midwife there that I knew already, which was incredible. And continued going through. Labor was 36 hours, and it got to a point where they did end up inducing me, obviously, at that point. When I got to the hospital, they started kind of slow and went up over time. And I did the whole mask, the laughing gas stuff that helped, right? And it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is really intense. Like, now I'm tired. I don't know, like, I want to keep going with this, like, but at the same time, I feel like there's something that my body is like not, like it seems like it's not progressing. And I was starting to consider the epidural at that point, like 36 hours in. And I was like, please just check me one more time, because if I'm close, I want to go for it. Like, I'll make it through. And at that moment they checked me, noticed that it was a cord prolapse. So the umbilical cord was coming out before him. And my husband describes it as ninjas coming down from the ceiling and sweeping me away like that, right? As it goes with an emergency C-section. Like, it was like prolapse. And then suddenly I'm being carted down the hall, and the woman that was checking me, her fingers are still inside me holding the cord in the baby's head. And it's like, I just am breathing. I'm staying calm. I'm doing my hypnosis tracks and experiences, dropping my finger and whatnot. Then it was, this experience of like, okay, where's the doctor? Where's the doctor? I'm not putting her out until the doctor's here. And then, okay, he's here, mask over, and I was out. And then I woke up, and it was just like, where am I? Like, delusional, so tired. And I'm like slapping myself because I know I'm about to meet my baby, and I like don't want to be tired for this moment. And having no idea what happened, because you don't know in that moment. Got to meet my baby, and because of C-sections, I don't think it's exclusively this way always, but my son ended up having tongue and a lip tie, as well as like a high palate. And there was like one other thing that he had that made it very hard for him to latch. And then my milk not coming in for 7 days, we ended up getting donor milk, which was one of the best tips that someone gave me to avoid having to do formula. And just continued. I did triple feeding for the first 6 weeks, which is first you breastfeed on both sides, and then you pump, and then you feed the baby, right? And so it was 2-team effort because it was a lot. So my husband was up helping a lot throughout the whole process. And I continued worked with lactation consultants. We spent like over $2,000 trying to get him to latch. And I think around 3 months of trying, maybe even 4, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pump. And so I did that for 13 months. And at one point had a scare that I had breast cancer because I had a lump that was forming, and I ended up having to get like a drain put in over the weekend to like drain it. Like mastitis progressed forward, and it was like, oh my gosh, I have a 5-month-old and now I might have breast cancer, and like thinking that for 2 days, and then thank God it wasn't that, right? But I feel for all the pumping moms out there because a pump is not as powerful to get rid of any like clogs and anything that might occur in that process. But in the end, it was a fight worth it for my son. And now I'm hoping for baby number 2, and hopefully the story will be different in the second round. Yeah.
Your story is a testament that every birth unfolds in a way that you might not have planned. It's unexpected. We're always so grateful for teams and professionals who help assist when there's emergencies. And it's so cool that you were able to utilize your preparation still in the C-section that you had.
I highly recommend hypnobirthing to anyone. I have now like an email written out that I send any pregnant mamas that I come across that's like, here's how I did it, because there's not really one path to hypnobirthing. And that was kind of a shocking like realization that I had to kind of curate my own process for it.
I would love to talk about your video experience and background in that. I love your passion that we need to capture stories. Did you have a way to capture your birth, or are there ways that you love to capture your stories or your life?
Oh, I love this question. So good. So I do have a folder of my labor, all my videos. Someone had told me, allow people to take photos and videos of your birthing process because you're going to want to look back on them because you do kind of black out over the whole experience. And it's so true. Like still to this day, I don't know how far I got in terms of being dilated or not, right? Just because of everything, how it goes down. And so I have wanted to make a hypnobirthing video. There was a big debate that I have had of, is my channel going to pivot to being a motherhood channel, right? I almost went down that route of like all the essentials that you need for a newborn, all the videos that we all watch whenever you're about to give birth, right? Like I'm a YouTube person. I binge watched to create my registry, right? Like I binge watched to figure out how to pump, like, or, you know, get a baby to latch while also pumping. All the things. And hypnobirthing is a topic that I know I could crush if I created a video on it. But through the exploration of determining which direction to take, I have officially determined I will be taking the like human design route. And I think motherhood, I definitely do want to talk about how it weaves into motherhood. As being someone that's also super strategic, know that a hypnobirthing video on that channel might not be as like aligned, I suppose, to a degree and with the algorithm, which is, I hate to hear myself say that, but very true. However, I did do a 2-month video with my son. I wanted to capture those first 2 months. And so what I did was just filmed a series of shots with multiple different scenes every time. So for any mom that wants to capture their kids' lives, whether you want to make it public or not, like I've since decided, and this is another reason why I didn't want to do a motherhood channel, is like I will not share my son online because of all the creeps out there. The way that I still continue capturing his life, every time that you film something, choose one orientation. So you're either doing everything vertically or everything horizontally. Then with each time that you film, try to tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end. So that might just be a wide of where the baby is laying, and then a close-up of the baby on the couch, followed by quick flipped camera of you explaining what's going on, or a closer up version of the baby on the couch, or the mess on the floor, right? Whatever it is, like have 3 shots that capture each moment. And the more that you can do that, the more dynamic it becomes. If you can add subtle movement to those, it's even better. So if you like just push in subtly on your shot, or if you just kind of like scan sideways, and it's not like a pan. Panning is terrible. Avoid all pans. They will slow down things. But if you can, do those like subtle movements, it makes it more dynamic. And then I just outsourced it to a video editor, and I said, hey, do your best to come up with an edit for this. I did not perfect the process. Like I was 2 months postpartum. I was still trying to figure out pumping. There was all this craziness. But I've gone back and rewatched that video so many times because it's such a cool moment to have captured. And I have wanted to go back and create more videos of my son, like a first year video, and I haven't gotten there yet just because it's, life is crazy. However, I think what I continue doing is taking those shots so that when you do, you'll have that. Not to mention the iPhone, if people are on iPhone, is getting so much better at curating the photos and videos on your phone. So I have like a photos app pinned to my home page on my phone, and it shows you memories. And so I'm constantly rewatching memories, which are very cute, even if not perfectly edited.
And when we think about our own childhood home videos, the nostalgia that comes, and you remember things that you didn't even know that you remembered. And so that's what you're able to capture for your son. I love that. You talked a little bit about when a second pregnancy comes along. Tell us, with the plans, is a VBAC part of your plan? Are you just going to go with the flow? What do you kind of anticipate for the next time around?
I recently had to start debating because I was 6 weeks pregnant and then started bleeding, so I had a miscarriage. I hadn't had the chance to think about it yet because we were also in the midst of moving. Literally, this happened on the day that we were moving. And so I ended up in the ER while my husband was moving with the movers. It was crazy. I continue to have a positive mindset throughout all of this. Just because bad things happen, bad things we label as bad things, it's okay, there is a greater plan to all of it. And, there's all these videos out there positive birth stories and whatnot. It can be a positive birth story based on how you perceive it, right? So even though I had what some might consider not so positive, it can be positive, right? So same with the miscarriage. I think that for my second, it's interesting because now I recognize that I'm high risk, whatever that means, right? In terms of being VBAC approach. I had been thinking that I wanted to do a midwife. I don't think a home birth, we rent, and I don't know. There's different houses that you can give birth in that are essentially home births. So I had a friend that recently did this, and she just had her baby last week, and her midwife, something happened in the birth where she said that if she was in a hospital, they would have pushed her to a C-section. But because the midwife was there and she knew these different maneuvers to get the baby in the right position, she was able to have a natural birth. And I think the hardest part for me, which I'm happy to hear any advice on, is honestly, the birth scares me less than having to pump again for another 13 months. That was way harder, I think, personally, for many different reasons. So the C-section definitely contributed to that, but it was also because it was an emergency C-section to a degree. And it's interesting because I've talked to other moms that are oh yeah, I actually ended up doing a planned C-section for my second, and it was the most empowering thing. And it was wow, that's never a mindset that I've considered, And it was interesting to hear that. But what about breastfeeding? She's oh, it's perfect. It was totally fine. And I was interesting. So if you go for, I still think I'm going to go for a VBAC in the midwife route. But it is interesting that if you end up with a second C-section, then it's should I have just done a planned one? I don't know. So that's kind of the thought process, if I'm being completely honest right now, in terms of the whole process. But I would love to avoid it because the recovery time of a C-section from a fitness perspective was challenging, for sure.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and your vulnerability. A lot of your story resonated with me, and I connected to similar experiences.
I also love your passion for creation and following your heart. If you've read that book, Create Anyway, Ashley Gadd, she shares this quote that said, "Your creative work matters, even if it's done in the margins of motherhood. Motherhood can be the catalyst that refines and hones your creative passions."
Ooh, that's so good. I love that.
You are just an excellent example of an individual who is honoring your identity, honoring your passions, going forward and giving the world the best of yourself and giving your family the best of yourself as well.
Thank you.
Thank you also for those tips on capturing the lives of our children. That's so important in this digital world, and just to remember to capture. It's already happening, so let's capture it. I also just wanted to put in a quick plug. My friend, she does lifestyle photography for mothers. Remember to get you in the picture as well, not just your kids. So you're there too.
Absolutely. It becomes harder and harder the older that they get. I find.
Yes, for sure. Well, every week we share a Mom Squad secret. This one is from Tamara. She says, don't stand when you can sit. Don't sit when you can lie. Don't read or do anything else if you can sleep. Such a good reminder.
That's so good.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being on the Best Birth podcast today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. We hope you've been elevated and inspired by this week's expert.
Subscribe today so you never miss an episode. And please share our podcast or post on your social media so that other moms and dads-to-be can also have the best birth.
Please note that the information provided is based on the expert's insights and personal experience. It is not intended as medical guidance. Please seek the advice of your medical provider as it applies to your specific condition.